Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for getting up and coming and being a part of this and being a part of the team. It means the world to me. I think most of you know who I am, but first of all, I want to thank Matt and Mercedes for inviting me to be here to speak with all of you a little bit this morning. I just want you to know that my heart is to share a little bit of our thoughts and work that we've done over human trafficking and what Homeland Security is responsible for, but then also, if we get time, I know this is going to surprise everybody here, but if you have a couple questions for me, I will certainly take those because I always think that's a little bit more engaging for all of you. There may be times where you see us doing something in the federal government or making decisions and you're wondering why on earth are they doing that or why is she saying that? And if I ever get the chance to ask her a question, I want to ask her this. So I'll do that at the end here if you guys are more than willing to do that. Well, you know my name is Kristi Noem. I've had the privilege of serving as President Donald Trump's Homeland Security Secretary. People often ask me how I ended up with that position. President Trump had called me and asked me if I was interested in being a part of his cabinet after he won the election. And he said, I know people have mentioned you maybe for Interior or Ag, but Kristi, what would you like to do if you were given the opportunity to be a part of the team? And I said, sir, I would like to be considered to be the Homeland Security Secretary. And he said, why would you want to do that? And I said, sir, because it's your number one priority. It's your number one priority. We have to secure the border. We have to deport these illegal criminal aliens that are in our country. It's going to be a big job, and it's going to take months and months and months. And frankly, sir, I think you need someone who's tough enough to actually do it. I think you also need to have someone that is able to communicate with the American people why we're doing what we're doing and why it's important to the families that live here. And I said, and I'm a wife and a mom and a grandma. And I think it's extremely helpful to have that perspective out talking to the American people with a heart for families and talking about the impact on families who've been impacted by this invasion that we've seen, but also by the crimes that we've seen perpetuated against the American people. And he was absolutely wonderful and blessed me with the opportunity to serve in this position. And it has been probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my lifetime. If you know anything about me, I'm a farmer and a rancher. Ended up taking over our businesses when my dad was passed away in an accident at the age of 49. I ended up quitting college and taking them over, getting hit by the death tax. That's what got me into politics, was because it made me angry that we almost lost our family business because of tax policy. I served in Congress, and while I was in Congress, worked on human trafficking, also then decided to run for governor of our state because governors are CEOs. Governors make decisions every day, and I wanted to live a life of significance, do something that mattered and make decisions that were better for my people. Since then, now President Trump has asked me to be a member of his cabinet, and I am extremely passionate about the fact that every single day when we get up, we need to do something that matters. We need to be engaged in things that change people's lives and give them the opportunities that we had growing up. I can't imagine what it would be like for my kids or for my grandkids if we didn't fight for the America that we had the privilege to live in when we were growing up. Now, Homeland Security is an interesting agency. It's got 23 different departments underneath it. So it has Customs and Border Protection, it has ICE, HSI, it has CISA, which is our cybersecurity agency of the nation. It is securing and helping small and medium businesses and also protecting critical infrastructure like our electrical grid from cyber attacks and those who would wish to harm us. We also have Secret Service. Under Homeland Security, we have FEMA, which is not only responsible for disasters, but it also is responsible for the continuation of government. If the worst of the worst thing happened to our country, FEMA is the agency that would step up and help us run the continuation of government. We also have many other agencies, I&A intelligence agencies. I tell people as I go through the list, we are blessed to have the Coast Guard under the Department of Homeland Security as well. But I tell people what happens in the jurisdiction of Homeland Security is that anybody who lives in this country or comes into this country or leaves this country, we have jurisdiction over. Any product or good that is in this country, leaves this country or comes into this country, we have jurisdiction over. And anything that is on the internet that is sold, communicated, or transpires over the internet, we have jurisdiction over. Our mission is to secure the homeland and to do it with integrity and honesty in a way that is responsible to the American people. So it is a big job, but it's one that we take very seriously, and we're very grateful that President Trump is in the White House and that he takes it seriously. Because as you can tell, the last president didn't. Now, when I served in Congress here, I was extremely passionate about human trafficking. I was a young mom at the time. Often when I would come here every week, I had all my kids with me and they traveled back and forth. And I was aware of what was going on in the country and across the world and the evil, and involved with my church and the work that we were doing against trafficking and sex trafficking. But I ended up sponsoring some legislation that ended up being signed into law that dealt with human trafficking, allowing us to go after websites that would knowingly perpetuate sex trafficking and human trafficking, especially in regards to children. That bill was a bipartisan bill, and it took a lot of work at the time, working with members across the aisle, but I was very thankful to see it signed into law, because previously, websites that facilitated the trafficking of human beings did not face any penalties or liabilities for having that platform and allowing that kind of action to transpire on their websites. And nobody could go after them or stop them from what they were doing by setting up a forum to where that slavery could be sold. Unfortunately, today, even years later, and we look at the history of the United States, we have more slavery going on in the world than we ever have before. So while we continue to do good work and pass bills, and I'm grateful for the work of our congressmen and senators who still bring legislation, we have a lot more work to do, and we'll continue to do that. When I was elected governor of South Dakota in 2018, I immediately put into my budget someone specifically that would be located within our Attorney General's office that would focus right on human trafficking, and that's all they would do every day, was to go after human traffickers that would be impacting our people in South Dakota, but across the country. In our state of South Dakota, we have 9 Native American tribes, and many of them dealt with a lot of trafficking of children, of women. Missing, murdered, and indigenous women were huge issues for us and for our people, and having someone who facilitated the work and the enforcement and the consequences and penalties for those who would be involved in that trade was incredibly important to me. We also passed a bill when I was governor to define what human trafficking was. Many times we were losing our court cases because it wasn't clearly defined in statute. So we did that. We defined what human trafficking was so that we would start winning these court cases against these perpetuators of violence. And then we also put in more resources for minors who would have been dragged into the industry, minors and individuals that, because of no family, no support at home, maybe drug addiction, bad influences, ended up with criminal records. We allowed them to be expunged and to be clean if they came out of that situation, and we also allowed them more resources for hospital care, medical care, and for mental health care. So, we bring all of that experience then, and I end up in this role at Homeland Security, and we have the responsibility for training the vast majority of the federal law enforcement officers in the country. We do that, and they go out to different agencies across the country. Many of our state and local law enforcement officers get trained under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security as well. And we have several agencies that have become specifically skilled and trained to fight human trafficking. And in fact, I've met with so many different groups that work in the space that you are and that you're passionate about and your advocacy matters for, that talk to me about what our HSI officers do every day. And maybe some of you are familiar with them, but our Homeland Security investigators are an agency that is a partnership with ICE that do the investigative work and specifically are the best in the world at going after traffickers. They go after them every day, and it doesn't matter what organization that I talk to, they say your HSI guys and gals are the best. They always are able to track down those who are trafficking individuals, find the ringleaders, and be able to rip that evil off by its head. And they are an incredibly powerful asset to have. And so I'm so thankful I get the chance to lead individuals like that and agents who get up every day to help save our children and to save women and men from the kind of slavery that we've seen. But let's face it, for many years at the southern border, because it was open, we saw trafficking like we'd never seen it before. The invasion that came over the border perpetuated the Biden administration literally losing 300,000 children. These are children that they brought in over the border. In fact, many times Border Patrol agents would tell you they would see the same child cross with different groups of people in one day. Or in 1 week, they would see the same child be 3 or 4 times crossing the border with a different group of people. They were literally using these children to facilitate their invasion into our country, because then they would immediately be granted asylum and released into our country. The Biden administration quit doing DNA testing of anyone who came into our country to make sure they were a part of our family, their families. And so that was one of the things that we immediately reinstated under the Trump administration, that if a child comes to the border with a group of individuals, we are DNA testing them to ensure that they actually belong together, that they are family members when they claim that. When we're out doing enforcement operations as well, going after criminals on our streets that are murderers, rapists, traffickers, when we find children with them, we're immediately DNA testing them to see if they should be in that situation or with those individuals. We have been able to relocate and to find over 10,000 children already so far. 10,000 children. But we've got a long ways to go, and that's why your help matters, and that's why what you do every day is so important to our department and the work that we do. I know a lot of you, and most of you are extremely familiar with the Sound of Freedom movie that is horrific, absolutely horrific, but extremely powerful and changes people forever. I think everybody who's seen it, it's changed their lives. But I don't know if you know that that whole movie started with an HSI agent who did his work, found 2 children, and then started to go after the ring and found this international web of evil that uncovered that entire trafficking organization there. And that started with one agent that was under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. That's the kind of work that we do every single day that I'm just so proud of. I just spent this last weekend in Nashville and spent an afternoon with some of those investigators, hearing about their work and seeing what tools they need to go after these criminals and make sure that we're able to bring these children back into safety and these women back into safety as soon as possible. Now, because of President Trump's policies, we've been able to see a secure border. We've been able to see the flow of migrants and criminals and people in this country slow down. To the last 2 months, the amount of people that have entered this country has been 0, which has never happened before in the history of this country. I've gone to 10 different countries and visited with their presidents in Central America, in Latin America, and visited with them and talked to them about the fact that when they have their citizens that are coming to our country, that they should turn them around themselves before they get to America. I have negotiated security agreements with them to share information on criminals and their backgrounds so that when they know who in their country perpetuated trafficking, that they flag them for us so we can find them if they happen to now be here, and we can bring them and force them into consequences and return them back to their home countries. These countries, because of those conversations, have worked and signed biometric data sharing agreements with us, security agreements. They're even telling us that they are now, because of President Trump's strong leadership, they have set up housing programs for their citizens to come back home. If they need a loan to get a house when they come back, they will help them. If they're people that aren't dangerous, they will help give their children scholarships. They'll give them food aid for a period of time, train them for a job. And we believe, after visiting in those 10 different countries with the leaders, that we have over 1.5 million people that have already gone home on their own and self-deported just because they recognize they shouldn't have been in the United States illegally. And if they want to come back someday, they need to do it the right way. And they needed to do it, come back on their own. So now, one of the things that President Trump's bill just passed, the big, beautiful bill that he talks about quite often, that is quite powerful, did have some policy changes in it. Obviously, it had a lot more resources for our border, for the border wall construction, but also enforcement with more ICE agents, more Border Patrol agents, more investigators will also be hired. There also will be the ability to return people back to their countries and dollars with that. But it also had some policy changes in it that I want you to know. It's going to make it absolutely mandatory with the language that was included in the bill to conduct criminal background checks on sponsors that would be with unaccompanied minors. We have, because of our work, arrested over 400 sponsors that were sponsors of children brought into this country that the Biden administration was paying to take care of and to traffic our children. We have stopped that, and we're so thankful that we now have language that makes it absolutely mandatory to run a criminal background check on someone before they can become a sponsor in our programs. We are tasked to be the chair of the Forced Labor Enforcement Task Force here for the federal government as well. And so we have individuals within Homeland Security that work every day on forced labor. And I know you all have heard the story of the California marijuana grow facility and what was unfolding there at that facility. That is happening in other places around this country that we will continue to bust up those operations. Do the investigative work necessary to make sure when we go in, we're able to bring those who perpetuated that type of violence and slavery, bring them to justice and incarcerate them and keep them in prison so they don't have the opportunity to be released and released over and over again like the Biden administration did. But also at that one facility, we found 14 children that were unaccompanied minors that were there. And we've often, I think 10 of them were under the age of 12 years old. And they were working alongside these individuals. And we had individuals that were working at this facility that were here illegally, but also were known child traffickers. And what was so shocking to me was to watch the fact that when these officers went in there to rescue these children and to bring them out of slavery, and we're still doing the work to find out if they were in sexual slavery or if it was forced labor slavery only, but we'll do our due diligence on that. But what shocks me is that we had individuals that when our officers went in to save these children and to get these criminals out of this business, that rioters attacked them and threw rocks at them and tried to kill them. And that even with them was a sitting congressman that was in that group of rioters attacking our law enforcement officers, who actually took one of the business cards from one of our agents when he was talking to them and then held it up for the TV cameras to tell everybody who he was and how he should be attacked and be brought to justice for what he was doing there by doing his work there that day. Doxed him and exposed him and his family to threats from these folks that are trying to stop the enforcement efforts that our ICE and HSI officers are doing. This is the battle that we're up against. And one of the things I want to ask you before I close is to ask you to be vocal. I'm not asking you to do anything other than to tell why you're involved in this organization, why you are showing up for meetings, why you are advocating, and to be willing to speak out. I've found so often that these individuals that are out there protesting our law enforcement officers and attacking our law enforcement officers are loud, and that many times communities get intimidated and don't want to say anything or don't want to support them. But we should be doing the exact opposite. We should use every opportunity that we have to stand for the rule of law. I tell people all the time, if you don't like the law, go to Congress and change it. My job is to uphold the law. And we have a president, finally, that doesn't pick and choose which laws to enforce and which ones not to enforce. It's the law is the law, and if you break the law, you will pay the consequences of it. And I think it is so incredibly refreshing to have a president like that. President Abraham Lincoln once said that slavery is founded on the selfishness of man's nature. Opposition to it is his love of justice. And that's what I hope you're all embracing today, is a love of justice, and that we live in a country that is still an example to the world. There is no place better to raise a family, to have an opportunity to own your own business, to live a successful life filled with joy and hope than in the United States of America. I hope you recognize that because you woke up here this morning, you're more blessed than 99% of the people in the world just because you woke up in the United States of America. And that is something we are incredibly grateful for. So thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for your support of going after those who perpetuate human slavery, trafficking, sexual slavery, and forced labor. It is an incredibly pervasive and evil network of individuals that is larger than I could have ever imagined. But I would tell you that if it wasn't for our individuals like you that have a heart for keeping it on the forefront of the conversation and helping us break the back of this evil, we would not have a country left. We would not have families left, and our children wouldn't have the chance to grow up and to be all that God envisioned and created them to be. So thank you for that. And I will open it up to any questions that any of you may have real quick. I know I went a little long, but if we have time for a couple, I'll sure take them. Yes, sir.
And now advocating for others. I want to know, what does leading with compassion look like when it comes to survivors?
What does it do for what? I'm sorry, something.
What does leading with compassion look like when it comes to survivors?
Well, number one, with survivors, you need to spend time with them. You need to spend time with them. I think we live in a world right now where everybody thinks they have all the answers, and everybody thinks that they know the right thing to do and is so quick to speak. And one of the first things I feel like I constantly have to remind people is to listen. Is to sit and listen, and especially when it comes to survivors, there's so much that we can learn. Years and years ago, when I spent some time with some dear friends of mine who are survivors of sexual exploitation and sharing their stories, they taught me so much about the difference in healing that is necessary when you've been exploited through sexual trafficking, prostitution, whatever it was. They said, you know, and a victim of violence that may have undergone a rape or a one-time incident on the street has a horrific thing that they have to try to heal and get over. But imagine being raped 50 times a day, over and over and over again. Someone who's been trafficked like that on a consistent basis needs a different, completely set and way to heal, and a response and people around them to help them recover from that. And they can be healed through God's grace. But we need to make sure that we don't always have all the answers, that spending time with people, listening to them, and using that in their care and healing afterwards is incredibly important. The one thing I'm a firm believer in is that God created us to serve people. We are happier when we are fulfilling our purpose. So most of the time when I find somebody who's miserable, I'm trying to remind them to go do something for somebody else. We will be happier physically, mentally, and spiritually if we are serving other people, because that's why we were created. Yes, sir. Way in the back. We'll do a couple more, then I'll get you guys back on time.
I'm an international political analyst, and I study a lot about the New York City.
Yes.
And I was neutral until the election this year. Then I find second day, 25th of June, detail and the pattern of Zoran Mandamani. So who is violating the law here? And I filed the complaint to the Justice Department. The multiple law he violated, federal law, 18 title, and human rights, attacking to the religion, and law enforcement. And not only that, the community. So he violating the law. What we can do for such people? This not tolerate in our society.
Are you talking about people in New York City that have to live under the law?
Yeah, in the New York City, about the Zoran, the guy who won the election.
Right.
I filed the case against him to the Justice Department. I have a copy here.
Yes.
If you need copy, I can give you.
Yeah, you can give it to one of my staffers that's back there right beside you. That'd be fantastic. I'd like to look at it. Listen, what we do when we run into sanctuary cities where the local law enforcement aren't able to help us because of mayors or city councils and people that won't have their backs and be there and help us with operations, as we double down. We put twice as many agents there. We go in there and use more individuals and more backup and still run operations, because the people who live in those neighborhoods, I've been there on operations many times with our agents, and people that walk by us on the streets on their way to work or taking their kids to school say, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for helping us even when our mayor or our city councils or our governors won't. So what we do in those situations is we send more law enforcement to make sure that we're taking care of the people that we're responsible for. Yes, ma'am. This will probably be the last one. Yeah, you two, both of you both can ask your question. That'll be fine.
I never imagined that this morning I would actually get to talk to you about this problem. And I am particular with an organization, and we are trying to reduce sex trafficking from foster children. And currently, foster children are the #1 sex trafficking source of domestic sex trafficking in America. There has been 2 recent reports, one from the OIG, where they found in 2 years there were 75,000 missing episodes of foster children. And it is the federal and state law to report foster children, but almost 70% of the episodes were never reported. And there's no prosecution for that, is what we found out. When the state actors fail to report missing children, they continue to get the Title IV stream, okay? If they report the children, their funding stream goes away. And so there's no accountability. There's never been one state actor or foster parent ever held accountable about not reporting a foster child. And in the Connecticut audit, it did a study of 6 children who were not reported missing and were foster children and ended up in sex trafficking. So
yeah, thank you for being passionate about foster children. I grew up in a family that fostered a young man, came into our family when he was 12 years old. I was younger than that, but changed our lives forever. He had lived in a horrific situation through a lot of abuse, and our family learned a lot through that. So ever since then, I've been passionate about the foster care system, and when I was governor, it was one of my main priorities. In fact, I made a pledge when I first became governor, I would not give a speech without mentioning foster care. And the fact that we needed more foster parents, and the fact that many times those who are fostering may be family members that are not the best situation for individuals to be in, because that's where the abuse continues to be perpetuated at times, or some of the trafficking that happens to foster children occurs. So thank you so much for being involved in that. I will read that OIG report, and we'll focus on that as well. One of the statistics that you all should know that I find that breaks my heart every day is that if we had every church in this country take in one foster child and adopt them, we wouldn't have any foster children. Every one of them would have a home and a family. So many times it is just people looking at themselves. And I have a sister who took in a 15-year-old foster boy and then adopted him, another brother who's adopted 3 children. We need to give these children families, and they need to be families that are safe. Last question.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Gina, and I'm from New Jersey, and I'm a survivor of domestic violence and different forms of child abuse that led to be abducted into sex trafficking. I am filled with gratitude to be here today and to be amongst so many passionate, committed people that are trying to do something to protect our children and provide safety. I am filled with gratitude for your courage to be here and for all that you're doing. And not for what's working, but for what's working. Because for a lifetime, I was the victim, but I was also considered the criminal that followed me with convictions after convictions in different states that I did not choose, that was forced upon me. It was not a life that I wanted. It was not a life that I dreamed of. And it was only until several months ago that all my convictions were finally vacated. But so I served a lifetime. We end up with the life sentence. But I was either able to continue to be the victim and feel sorry for myself, or take advantage of the resources that so many of you, individuals and organizations, provide for survivors. And so I am filled with gratitude, and this is why I chose. If what happened to me can make a difference in one person's lives, then it was worth it. This was not my calling, but I am serving now. I'm from New Jersey. I'm a national speaker. I'm an advocate. And as you said earlier, which really resonates with my heart, it's like we are the people. If we want change, let's not hurt each other. Hurt people shouldn't hurt people. Let's do something about it. Let's come to Washington. Let's be the voices. And so I see you and I hear you, and I thank you so, so much, and I thank you and all the administration.
Well,
and
thank
God
you.
bless you and protect you.